Welcome home racing fans. Well, I'm pretty excited to get this new car from NSR. Just got it in from LEB Hobbies. Great service as always. A lot of people have talked about this car a little bit, and it's true that the deco, the livery on this particular car isn't really accurate for the car itself, but I just don't care. That's just me. I just think the car looks absolutely hot, and I had to have it. I'm not that big of a stickler on things like that. I just wanted a fast car that looked cool, and that's what I got. So I'm pretty happy with that. And the application of the paint and everything is very well done on this car. I mean, NSR usually does a pretty good job, and I don't find any issues here. So on the outside, this car, the Vet itself, isn't a new car to the lineup, just some new paint. And I just think it's a good car. I've only got one other Vet, and I just decided, man, I just like the way this car looks, and sometimes that's all it takes to click the buy now button, right? So on the outside, no surprises. Like I said, if it bothers you that it's not accurate, then well, just pass on it. But NSR, they make no bones about it. They're making cars for the performance racer, the club racer. And they take liberties. So do other companies, and that's okay. If you don't care and you just want a car that looks cool and goes fast, well, this might be the ticket. So when I opened the box, I noticed that there was a little sheet in here that describes the screws for the front axle adjustment from LEB, and I really think that's a great addition to put inside the box to let people know exactly where to put these screws and what they're for. So I really appreciate that. That's a nice effort. All right, taking a look on the inside. Well, veterans already know this, but if you're new to NSR, there's quite a bit to talk about, really. First of all, you'll notice that I went with the Sidewinder configuration. Now you can go angle winder, so you do have that option when you order them from LEB Hobbies. They have both Sidewinder and angle winder. I just prefer Sidewinder for my smaller track. It's personal preference, so at least you have the option. So if you don't like this one, then get the other one. Shark 25 motor. I have no complaints about this motor. There's a lot of fans of it, just individually. It's a good motor, 25K. Standard gearing, 11 to 32. Precision fit axle to bushing fit back here is just, wow, about as good as it gets. And, we talked about they cost more, but you get a little bit more. So if you're new, you're seeing a big difference between this and a Carrera or Scalextric, I'll bet you. Anyway, you get aluminum wheels, very precision aluminum wheels, front and rear. Of course, you have your pod assembly that you can adjust. All 3 points to adjust the float of the car, and we'll get to that later. And you flip it around over here, and you'll notice you have a drop arm guide assembly. This comes in handy for different track surfaces, uneven track surfaces, and you can adjust it. And again, we'll get to that later. But overall, this is just a great platform for you to get started. If you're just new to the performance part of our hobby, this is about as good as it gets right here. Many fans of this platform. And if you're into magnet racing, well, you see you do get a button magnet included, but doesn't do us any good out here on the wood track. But anyway, I have nothing to complain about. I've had plenty of these cars before. I know it's a fast mover. I just can't wait to start running it, but there are a few things we're going to go over, some adjustments and stuff that you can make out of the box. Just a few light things, nothing major, and then we'll get to the road test. So before you start running a car like this, you're going to have to go through it and just double check all the adjustments, make sure that everything is tight. And to do that, you're going to need a wrench. So you're going to need a 1.3 millimeter 50 thousandths Allen wrench, or some people call it 050 back in the day. And you're going to need this because that's what fits these screws, like the ones that go here for the front axle and for your wheels, all 4 wheels. And for the gear here, you're going to need this wrench. So if you're going to invest in this, you're just going to have to invest in this and get your wrench so that you can work on them. So you're going to go through and you're going to double check and make sure that everything is tight where it needs to be, no binding. Also, you're also going to have to lubricate the car. I like these little needle oilers. You can find them anywhere. And just a light drop of oil here on the bushings and a very, very slight drop on each end of the motor. And I mean very slight. People just always over lubricate. You just need a little bit and it goes a long way. As far as the gears go, you can use oil. I prefer, a synthetic grease like this. It's just me, but I like to put a little bit of light coat of this grease on these gears. You're going to want to lubricate that. So before you start racing and running the car, you're just going to have to go through a car like this. This isn't like a regular, ready to run car like Skeletric or Carrera. You're going to have to go through this. Just double check everything, before you start racing hard. Another thing that's just as important are the wires from the motor to the guide. A lot of times these wires are not mounted in their mounts in the chassis. They're just loose, and you do really need to take time and put them in place. You'll see these little notches that are here. You place the wire in there, rod it nice and clean all the way to the front. The front's the important part. You don't want these wires to be too tight. So what we're talking about is when you test fit the wires and you turn it like this, you don't want these wires to be pulling on your ferrules right there. You don't want them to be too tight. So you just want to get them nice and loose, just like that, nice and free. That's just about right, or at least it is for me. And when you do it evenly, like I've done here, you'll notice that it makes this guide pretty much self-centering, which is a nice side effect. So we all like that. So just take the time to go ahead and mount these wires. I can also say that I use adhesive, some UV glue, and I glue them in place. And that makes sure that they just stay there, because especially up front here, you really need to glue them because they will pop out. It's a pretty snug fit, but you still need adhesive. And when you do glue that wire, another thing I want to mention is when you put your front axle back in place, if you remove it, is that when this guide moves back and forth, the wires are not rubbing the front axle. You don't want that. So I really like that they put these mounts right there where they need to be, so that even when you're turning, the wires don't lift up and they don't rub the axle. So that's another good reason to make sure that you get those right where you want them and glue them in place. So before we install the screws to adjust the front axle, there's another screw in that bag, and that is for your drop arm adjustment. Now, as you can see here, I've installed it. I've left just a little bit of travel. We don't have a lot here, just a little bit. Our track is pretty flat. I think that's good enough. I might even tighten it up a little bit more. Some people tighten it all the way down and they don't need it at all. It's all driver preference. You have to set it up for your track environment, but it's good that they include the screw. So just remember that. Look underneath the base, and if you want to know what that screw's for, that's what it is. All right, we're just about ready for our road test. The last thing to do is install those screws up front so we can adjust our ride height here on the front axle. So you have your screws on each side here and in the bottom. As we showed you earlier, I've got this thing adjusted pretty far up because our track and braid is flush, and I've got it set up to where it's just barely touching. It's not supporting the weight, just a little bit. I think that'll be good enough for our road test. So we've went through, we've done the lubrication. As far as tires go, well, this is the way the car came. We're going to use the stock tires, and there's actually nothing wrong with them really. So we'll talk a few alternatives here in a second, but the way we're going to test it is the way it came. So let's see what it has. Okay, just a quick word on aftermarket tires. If you're into silicone, you like your silicone tires, I prefer the Quick Slick CB58 XF, the extra firm, or you could go firm, but I like the 58 tire size. That works well for me. And if you like Paul Gauge urethane, if you're a urethane racer, you can go 20, 12, 5 LMDF, or 19 12.5 LNVF. The 20 is a little bit tall, but I like it because I can sand it and adjust that diameter. But those are the two main sizes I would choose for these cars, aside from all the options that you have from NSR. But like I said, for our road test, we're just going to test this car just the way it is, and it is ready. Car is just super smooth. I'm driving a little hard, but I want to find the limits here. Man, smooth car. All right, well, that's just one smooth operator. It just runs great, nice and smooth. We haven't done any major tuning to this car. Remember, just out of the box, just a few adjustments, nothing else. And 3301 for the best lap. That's pretty fast on this track. But to be honest, that ain't nothing yet. You start doing advanced tuning on these cars, and you just give them a little bit more, and it just gets better and better. So yeah, I'm pleased. Well, you're not going to hear me say anything bad about this car. I mean, other veterans will tell you the same thing. You'll hear it all day long, that these cars just haul the mail, and they're just begging you to keep tuning. Different tires, true in the fronts, adding some tape on the pod, on the bottom, changing the pod, changing the motor, adjusting your gearing. That's what these things are made to do. They want the racer to keep going with it, and I think they're well worth the money. Yeah, they're a little pricier than your ready-to-run cars, but I've done this, and I can tell you that you can go grab a low-cost Carrera car, the C7, and you can go through part by part and replace everything. Axles, bushings, wheels, tires, motor. And you're going to find out it's going to cost a lot more than this does out of the box. And even when you do that, it's probably not going to be as quick as an NSR. I've seen some very fast ones done, but out of the box, I think it's well worth the money. So anyway, great job, NSR. Thank you, LEV Hobbies. This was just a very fun weekend playing with this car. If you guys, my best suggestion to you is, get in our forum, get on Facebook, and ask other veterans what they are doing. Find out what their tune-up tips are, because we could do this for hours with different tuning. But there's so many race clubs out there that have these as a standard class. Find out what they're doing. Maybe they have a track similar to yours. They can give you the best advice. So get involved out there and ask some questions, and I'm sure these guys will come around and give you the answers. But again, anyway, thanks, LEB. This was a really fun weekend. Just what a hot car.